And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house. Today we're going to be talking about fibroids and ovarian cysts. So this is a really cool topic. Again, I have a real lab test I'm going to go over that I review with the patient today. I'm going to show you what these hormone imbalances look like and what the major factors that drive these type of female hormone issues. Before we do, smash that like button, put your comments down below. Really excited to review this topic with y'all and actually give you real action items. So out of the balance, off the bat here, we have certain female hormone imbalances that can drive certain tissue growth. So with high levels of androgens or testosterone, we can see ovarian cyst formation. With high levels of estrogen, we can see things like fibroids or endometriosis, things like that growing as well. Obviously, with those type of estrogen dominant type of patterns, we can also see a lot of PMS symptoms, bloating, cramping, moodiness, irritability, etc., etc. So again, the driving factors, we're going to talk about that and what these imbalances look like on lab test as well. So first things first, we have high levels of androgens. The major thing that's going to drive that is going to be high levels of insulin. When you have high levels of insulin or dysglycemia, right? So you can have high levels of insulin because you're just constantly eating sugar and you can be in like a diabetic state where your blood sugar is just always high and you have insulin resistance. That of course is going to be one element of this. Where you're overweight and you're surging insulin all the time because your blood sugar is so high and your body is trying to get that sugar out of the bloodstream where it's causing damage and getting it into the cell for energy or fat storage. That's the one thing, right? High levels of insulin is going to upregulate certain enzymes at the cellular level called 1720 lyase, which is going to take and convert some of that estrogen over to testosterone. Right? This is just part of the catabolic, or should say the collateral damage of high levels of insulin. Insulin causes all kinds of different problems. So that's the first thing out of the gates. Now, you have dysglycemia, right? So this can be someone that looks reasonably healthy. They're not diabetic. They may test perfectly fine on their fasting glucose, but they're eating lots of refined sugar and processed grains throughout the day where their blood sugar's up and down, up and down, up and down. Their doctor may come in, take a picture of their blood sugar like in the morning, fasting. Oh, it looks fine because their blood sugar is just up and down, snaking along. Every time that snake goes up and down, you're having massive surges by the beta cells of the pancreas, surging insulin. And so you could have normal blood sugar on a test, but you could be surging insulin all day because you have this reactive hypoglycemic dysglycemic pattern. And that's going to be creating lots of deficiencies in magnesium and B vitamins, and will throw off your hormones because you're missing a lot of these mitochondrial nutrients to be able to metabolize and deal with sugar. And then you're surging insulin, which is then taking a lot of that estrogen and moving it downstream into testosterone. So that's one part. We can have just high levels of estrogen through relative estrogen dominance. Relative estrogen dominance is when you have normal-ish levels of estrogen, but your progesterone's just really low, relatively speaking. So on average, it's like a 23-ish to 1 ratio of progesterone to estrogen. So progesterone's way higher throughout the month on average than estrogen, about 22, 23 to 1 progesterone to estrogen. That ratio starts to skew, even if it's 5 to 1, 10 to 1, you still have way more progesterone than estrogen, but that's starting to get into relative estrogen dominance. And then we have absolute estrogen dominance where we just have very low progesterone, very high estrogen, and it may kind of get to a 1-to-1 level. Most of the time, it's just a relative issue. And so we'll look at the labs, and I'll show you in a second of what that looks like. Well, high levels of estrogen can drive cells to grow and multiply. So kind of my analogy is estrogen causes cells to grow, progesterone causes cells to grow up. One causes cells to multiply, the other one causes cells to differentiate and mature. Very important. So that can cause the endometrial tissue to overgrow, create fibroids, right? Essentially a leiomyoma, which is a benign tumor. You can have endometrial tissue grow outside of the uterus, on top of the ovaries, other areas. That's called endometriosis. That's possible. Same with adenomyosis, which is where the uterine lining gets impacted into the uterine muscle, right? Similar as well. And then, of course, you have like fibrocystic breast condition, which is you have fibrocystic tissue on the breast, and it can become very tender and painful during premenstrual time as well. See, what else can we have? I think those would be the big ones out of the gates. And of course, if you're on a birth control pill and you have synthetic hormones, that's automatically driving a lot of that situation. And high levels of hormones can definitely throw off vaginal pH as well. So that can start to create increased chance of yeast infections due to the fact that your hormones throw a major monkey wrench in the pH of your vaginal canal, could increase chance of yeast overgrowth. So out of the gates, the big things that are going to drive high levels of estrogen are birth control pills, increasing phytoconsumption of like phytoplant consumption of estrogen, phytoestrogen consumption. That would be things like soy is a big one out of the gates. So your phytoestrogen, plant estrogen. So soy is a big one. Consuming foods with plastics that are wrapped in plastics. Not as much worried about like storing it in your fridge. I'm worried about more that water bottle sitting in the back of your car, microwaving something in plastic, something that could potentially get UV light or heat on it. You're going to see more liberation in that. I get more concerned about water bottles sitting around all day, buying them at a cheap convenience store. They left them out the day before because they didn't have enough room in the fridge. I get worried about those kind of things. So plastics, hormones in the meat, not buying organic, healthy animal products, getting the hormones and the growth hormones, drinking conventional milk. Those are going to, pesticides as well. Organochlorine pesticides tend to have estrogen-like effects. Getting fluoride exposure in the water. All of these things are going to be driving estrogen dominance. And then, of course, being stressed. The more your adrenal glands are stressed, the more your progesterone can drop, because your progesterone can be used to pinch hit. It can be called in to pinch hit for cortisol to deal with that stress downstream. And so that progesterone can drop and go downstream to cortisol, and that can start to bring up that relative ratio. Even though progesterone is still higher, it can bring up that relative ratio of estrogen to progesterone. So I hope that makes sense. So when I'm working with a patient, we're looking at all the different vectors. We're setting the table with good diet and lifestyle, right? No phytoestrogens in regards to soy, those kind of things. We're eating healthy proteins and fat. We're fixing dysglycemia. We're dialing in the carbs based on activity and metabolic needs. We're making sure foods are organic, no pesticides, no GMOs, good clean water filtration, minimize the amount of plastics that you are putting your food in. Definitely store up on some Pyrex containers, which are glass-based, or a good like Yeti or Clean Canteen that you can put your water in during the day for storage, and or getting some glass water bottles if you need that with like a Topo Chico or like a Pellegrino during the day. Try to minimize all of the different vectors. And then we'll also look at your labs and look at the other. How's your detoxification doing? Are you expelling those toxins well? Because we're going to get naturally exposed, but do we have good pathways that are excreting those toxins to prevent them from over accumulating in our system, right? That's the better question that we really want to keep an eye on. Let me show you some labs here, y'all. This will be fun. So again, I'm in the trenches all week with patients. So this isn't theory for me. This is actual practice. So this is how it looks. This is a 33-year-old female that I saw today. And you can see out of the gates, she had some estrogen dominant symptoms. She has, out of the gates, polycystic ovarian syndrome, uterine fibroids. She has sleep issues, rosacea, which could be an autoimmune component, mood, sleep, energy issues, and digestive issues. So she has all the big five. And so this is her adrenal test / female hormone test, so we can get a window under the hood what's really happening here. So first off, you can see high levels of estrogen out of the gates, right? Estradiol's at 5.31. That's off the charts. And then you can see progesterone is also pretty darn high. I want to be 15, right? I want to be around 2 to 3 o'clock on this Dutch gauge, if you will. So she's at about 10 to 11 o'clock. So out of the gates, we want there to be at least parity. If we were to put a time clock on here, this would be around 4 o'clock. This would be around, 10 or 11. We want them to be at least at the same time, right, to prevent estrogen dominance. So it's way later in the day with estrogen than progesterone. So this is patented estrogen dominance. Progesterone should be around, ideally, 15. So it's a little bit low. It's not bad, right? I see women that are literally in their 30s and down close to the menopausal level. So it's not bad, but it definitely could be improved upon. So out of the gates, we definitely want to work on supporting progesterone, getting that close to the 14, 15. And then we got to tone down that estrogen. So, of course, we're going to be making all the diet and lifestyle changes. We're going to be giving things like calcium deglucarate or DIM just to help support detoxifications here. And this is how ovarian cysts tend to turn out here. Look at this. So first, I was inquiring. I'm like, hey, do you have ovarian cysts? Do you have PCOS? I said PCOS first, and that's an acronym that if you don't know it, it may go over your head. It stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. Once I said that, the patient's like, oh, yeah, I was told I had a cyst once. Okay, great. That makes sense because this is the fuel that drives ovarian cyst growth. So, of course, the big vector that we're trying to mitigate here is, one, make sure there's no hormone exposure. So sometimes things like, hey, you have a partner that uses estrogen or testosterone cream, right? And during intimacy or whatever, they're getting exposed. That's something, right? So you always have to look at that. The next thing, the biggest thing, is going to be insulin issues, dysglycemia, right? So those are going to be the biggest things. So working on blood sugar and making sure those perturbations, those up and down swings are cut out, making sure we dial on the carbs. And there's good proteins and good fats. Think of a fire. That fire is nice and stable when you put a good log on that fire, maybe a tiny bit of twigs. When you put no log and just a little bit of twigs and mostly paper and gasoline, what does the fire do? Up, down, up, down, up, down, because that kindling provides the stability. The big logs provide the stability, right? Just the flaky paper and gas just creates this up and down swinging effect. Oh, and you could see also flat cortisol rhythm, right? Flat and low cortisol, right? So free cortisol, total cortisol, both low, and then cortisol rhythm low, just skirting throughout the day. So I always say flat cortisol rhythm, flat cortisol mood, flat cortisol energy, right? So energy and mood are going to be flat. And of course, with low cortisol, that can always drive sleep issues because you can be waking up with low blood sugar due to your adrenaline trying to constantly pick up that low blood sugar during the night. That's common. So if we keep on going down the list here, and again, all my labs that I show patients are pulled out here, but you can at least get a sense of her age, kind of where she's at. So 33, obviously, she's cycling. Her hormones are high, and if that's the case, look at her estrogens. All of them are high. Now, in cycling women, we're mainly focused on estradiol. This is the stronger, more practical estrogen that's going to be produced during cycling age, and that may shift to estriol as they go into more menopausal age. And DHEA here from the adrenals will actually become a precursor to make this estriol down here. Either way, this person had high levels of estrogen across the board. So that's odd, right? So, big things out of the gates, all the diet and lifestyle things I already mentioned. Their estrogen gauge here, this is how they're detoxifying estrogen. Looks pretty good, right? It's mid-range. I'm bumping that up a little bit. We're going to make it a little bit higher just to make sure all these pathways are open. We're giving some calcium to glucarate. We're giving some glutathione precursors and sulfur precursors to really make sure we're able to bind this thing up and run our detoxification pathways well. We already saw progesterone on page 1. Androgens downstream are a little bit high, but that's because testosterone, these metabolites trickle downstream, so that kind of makes sense. The same enzymes that are affecting this are affecting the downstream hormones here. And then let's go look at some organic acids. This is interesting enough here too. We see melatonin's a little bit low. She had some sleep issues, right? And so we'll talk about that on the organic acid side. And then you can see right here, all of our organic acids look pretty decent, right? Looking at B12, methylmalonic acid, looking at xanthourinate and kinourinate, looking pretty decent. Looking at dopamine and adrenaline, not bad there. Melatonin, a bit low. So we're going to come in here. This person had side effects with melatonin, so we're going to really work on supporting 5-HTP and a lot of the B vitamin precursors to help make better melatonin naturally. Now, this person's already had 80% improvement with sleep already in the last 2 months. So we're doing a lot of things right, but we're going to try to get that to 100%. And we're going to use some amino acids, B6, and of course, good diet and lifestyle strategies to help that. So out of the gates here, what are we looking at? Let me just get to the top again here. So with this patient out of the gate, she's cycling, right? Hormonally cycling. High levels of estrogen, lower progesterone, high levels of androgen, testosterone, flat cortisol rhythm. So we're working on blood sugar, we're working on diet, we're working on digestion, lots of digestion issues. We're working on supporting estrogen detoxification, supporting the mitigating factors that are driving that up in diet and lifestyle. We're adding in progesterone. We're going to be adding in herbs to help with the HPA, HPAG axis, because look at this flat cortisol rhythm. So we're going to be adding in maca, we're going to be adding in Dong Quai and different herbs and maca to really help get that HPA axis on. We're going to use progesterone as well to really help support that level up to a 15 or so. And we're going to really work on good blood sugar stability to mitigate the surging insulin to bring down that testosterone. Of course, there's lots of gut issues and tummy issues that a lot of hormonal experts miss. They glom on and see hormone issues and they forget about the gut. Remember, all of your building blocks to make your hormones come from fat-soluble vitamins, cholesterol, and proteins, right? All your steroid-based hormones come from cholesterol. All your peptide-based hormones come from protein. If you're not breaking down protein, fats, and cholesterol well, right, aka what's in animal products, you're not going to be able to have the good raw material to make your own hormones. So we got to have good digestion is the foundational support on that. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, let me know. Please comment down below. Trying to actually give you real world input from the trenches. A lot of people talk about it, but they don't do it. So I want to show it to you just from my virtual clinic, what that looks like, so people can wrap their heads around what a real situation and a real case looks like. If you enjoy it, give me a thumbs up. Put your comments down below. If you want to work with someone like myself, I see patients worldwide via functional medicine, telehealth, consult support. I'm there for you. There'll be a link down below if you want to click and work with me and my team. There'll be access there. And feel free and subscribe and comment below. I will also dive into your questions here next. All right, what do we have? Okay, let me see here what kind of questions I have. I have some.